you use your platform a lot to raise awareness around mental health. Where does that passion come from?
I struggled myself, and growing up, I also came from a broken home and I didn't have anyone to really talk to. And I did a lot of stupid things and I made a lot of mistakes growing up that I just wouldn't want others to repeat. I just, there was like a point in my life around when I moved out and I turned 18 and I just felt like there was no purpose in life. I was questioning everything that I, grew up believing. And I thought the only thing that could give me purpose in life would be helping others and knowing that I could leave an impact that was more than like, I basically like turned away religion and realized that in my head, nothing exists and there's no point in anything. So I have to create a point in order for me to just have a reason to keep living.
You mentioned like when you were 18, like you made it your mission to help other people and you were at a place where you felt like you had no purpose in life. Like where did this negative frame of mind as a kid come from? Like what was childhood like?
When I was growing up, I grew up in a very religious, conservative family where there was all these rules and little room to break the rules. And equally, I had a family that didn't. It certainly I knew nothing about love, and I was punished in a lot of different ways for things that I didn't know I was even doing wrong. I was told that I would never make it in music. That was a waste of my time. I mean, without getting too much into it, I just grew up in a household where I couldn't be myself or have any contradicting views or dress how I wanted. Just got called all the time, and I was like, I'm bisexual, and I lived in a homophobic family where I'd like either get slandered or hit for dressing specific ways. So when I turned 18 and I was able to move out, I could like finally be myself, ask questions, and live how I wanted to. And by doing that, I was able to have a whole different mindset and be like, wait, I had the ability to question, which I didn't have growing up.
Like I think a lot of times when people kind of grow up in a broken home or they have this toxic, dysfunctional stuff going on, like you talked about with the way you were and your parents not being accepting and that they were homophobic. I think like things like school, sports, clubs, and stuff can be like, or extracurricular activities can be like great outlets for kids to kind of take the pressure off like their home life. So, what was school like for you?
School was pretty brutal. I felt like I went home to get bullied and then I go to school to get bullied. I don't know what it is about me, but this is something I've recognized. I've always been like do you watch wrestling at all?
Like professional wrestling?
Yeah, like WWE at all?
Yeah, yeah.
There's like the term the heel, right? You know about the heel?
I mean, I've only watched it more recently because of Logan Paul got into WWE and I started watching because of him. But I watched it like back in the day when it was like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and people like that.
The Rock and the Paul brothers have also fallen into this term, the heel, but it's like a specific type of wrestler that is booed whenever they enter in the room. And they're like, the hated person. I don't know what it was, but even when I was like trying to dress normal in high school, I got bullied. I was like, I think it's because I wanted to be a rapper in a small town where it was like mostly white and conservative. And basically, I started playing in bands growing up, and then I had a band that just fell apart. It was like really bad. One of the singers died in a car accident. It was just like a whole thing, and I was like, I just don't want to be part of bands. I wanted to be a rapper because it was like drumming with words, and that's what I was at the time. And when I was a rapper, I was like a SoundCloud rapper where everyone like made fun of me, and I became like a joke within school districts, and they made like accounts making fun of me. And then it was like my dream that I always have wanted to do, which is to be a musician, no matter what, has always been scrutinized by large amounts of people, including my family and friends. So I was just like, I'm going to do it. Every single person that tells me I can't do something is the reason I'm going to do it.
So you went to school to get bullied, went home to get bullied. You were like hated no matter, where you went.
Yeah, the one thing that has been consistent in my life has been that. Yeah.
Like how did you deal with that like mentally like as a kid? Like what was your frame of mind like? What was your mental health like as a teenager?
Yeah, I developed an eating disorder in high school where I'd eat like an apple and some snack crackers and something in like for a daily meal for a little while, and I dropped from like 120 to 90 pounds in high school. And then I also just took it out on myself, and I'd like hurt myself, and I'd like try to run away, and like I just like took it out on myself. I would like just do everything I possibly could to blame I mean, it's like it wasn't even blaming myself. I guess it was kind of like a victim mindset where it's like I But I mean, I was a teenager. There was no rationale behind it. I just hated myself and took it out on myself.
Was there ever a point where, asked your parents for like any kind of help, or were you seeking to get any kind of help for where your life was and how you were feeling about yourself mentally with everything going on?
Yeah, so my dad doesn't believe in depression. It's like a weakness to him, and he doesn't believe in therapy. He thinks that's a business to make money. So I was never able to get professional help growing up. But also, just for the record, my mom has been awesome through this, but she had like the type of personality where it was like not basically succumbing. Do you know what I'm saying? So, but she would always like, pull me aside and be the type of person to be like, don't ignore that, love you, blah, 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 right? Which is great. But yeah, I was never able to get professional help growing up, and that's something I had to get for myself when I moved out. And that's when I started realizing also that so much of my mindset and hatred towards myself was a product of my upbringing. But it's equally time for me to take responsibility, get therapy, and make the changes I needed to within myself to be better.
So you move out at 18 and you end up getting professional help then, right?
It was around like 20 that I started getting professional help, but like all towards like it was like a journey moving out into like, okay, wait, now I can do things for myself. I can dress the way I want to. I blah, blah, blah. Wait, I need to get help. Wait, I can actually make a change and not become the person that I thought.
So your turning point of changing your life, changing your mental state was moving out. That was like the snowball that like created a bunch of momentum.
No, it was like that was like the start of it, but like the snowball really hit when I was 20, I think 20, where I can't even legally say anything other than I got completely screwed over by like rich people in a way where like I contracts and things that like, do you know what I'm saying? Like some like, and I basically had this breaking point where I hit $0 in my bank account moving out, having a dream of being a musician with nothing. And I had this, there's like this day I do remember where I just like had like not been getting sleep for a week because I was just like crying myself to sleep every night with zero, like being like, I'm broke. There's nothing I can do. I'm never going to make it as a musician. Where I was like, wait a second, talent doesn't matter how good looking you are. What matters is figuring out a way to get there, and that the only person stopping myself at this point is myself. It is everything is completely on me, and what happens with the rest of my life is completely in my control from here on out. That it was like and I think that was around like 2021 too. Actually, it's 21. I do remember it now. 21 is when this happened.
What would you tell yourself to keep going despite having no money in the account? Like you were bullied a lot as a kid, told that, SoundCloud rapper's never going to make it. You had people in your family telling you you're not going to make it. You were told that, going to therapy is a joke and that like your mental health stuff was just a sign of weakness. How did you continue to motivate yourself to not give up on your dreams?
I just realized that if life was meaningless and if when we die it fades to black, that means I only get one life. And rather than betting on a heaven or waiting for things to get better, I better like take today. Today has to be the day I make the change because I get one life and time isn't, there's no going back. I have to live my life exactly how I want to be and where I want to be in, or else there is no, I don't know what the word is, but like it's like life doesn't coddle you, right? Like there's no, I didn't have a safety net, you know.
And so you go to therapy when you're like, I guess around 20 to like, deal with a lot of the issues that you had like growing up. What were some of the, like looking back now, it's been about 5 years. What were some of the biggest like things that you had to work on?
Number one was taking accountability, and then number two was realizing that like I had to learn what love is, and I like because I didn't have a good example growing up. And then equally, I had like a lot of like sexual trauma that happened to me around like my 20s that like I had to work through, and like processing what actually happened to me, which is like it's really weird how when like really traumatic things happen to you, your brain kind of like blocks them out, and you'll be like, this didn't happen to me. And then like going to a therapist, I'd explain what was happening, like thoughts I had, etc. And then my therapist was like, hey, did you in your history ever have this happen? I was like, no. And then by the end of the, a few therapy sessions, I was like, wow, that did happen to me. So I had to like process things that happened to me that my brain just like blocked out, probably out of safety for my brain to like not understand what happened, if that makes sense.
I'm curious, like you mentioned that your mom like has still been like has been a big influence on you and has been like very supportive. Was there anybody else that comes to mind that was like really helpful for you, like when you moved out of your parents' house, that like kind of kept you like on a path forward?
Yeah, I got lucky in that there was someone my mom was friends with whose son was a producer and sound engineer who I was able to start doing calls with, and he believed in me enough to just. And I mean, the biggest thing was I was like, I am at a rock bottom. Can you please give me advice? How do I get myself out of this? His name was Tyler Lindgren, and he started giving me connections and talking with me about like, hey, here's what you have to do. And then he forwarded me to Joey Barba, who's a producer who produced some of my first ever songs that actually got some speed. And we started working together. And Joey gave it's like Joey Barba and Tyler Lindgren were two of the first people to give me chances at a time where I had nothing. And because of that, you know, I've, they were like the jumping pad I needed to, you know, get other people to listen and care.
What was the moment where you realized you finally had like kind of made it out of that dark place and you were like thriving in your career?
I don't know if I've had that moment. I think I'm still going through a tunnel, but I feel like I'm halfway there. I feel like the light at the end of the tunnel is like halfway, and I'm at a good point where I can take a little like 5 minute breather, but I still need to keep going. I don't think I've made it yet. I think I'm just on the way.
But was there like a moment or like a concert or a show you did where you felt like, oh, like I belong here? Like compared to like, being the SoundCloud rapper that everybody called you when you were a kid.
I remember the first ever big show we played was in London. We played a show called Download, which is a big festival in the UK. And we actually had like a crowd of 10,000 people that showed up, which I remember was like nuts that many people in the UK showed up. Interestingly enough, we had people throwing bottles of at us as well. It was like a small group of people. I would say of the like 10,000 people, that 5 to 10,000 maybe of that group of people, there's probably like 100 people there who were just trying to boo and throw things at us. But you know, it was great. It didn't feel bad. I remember being like, I've come this far. F- all of you. I knew I was always going to be the heel, infamous type character, and like, get throw it at me. I don't give a. You know, I was in that. I remember feeling powerful in that moment.
Do you think that like carrying the like kind of the identity of the heel and like having the chip on your shoulder, do you think eventually that will kind of cost you? Like you think eventually you'll reach a point where you're like, you know what, like I gotta like kind of let this part of me go, or do you think that's like gonna continue to be like your the powerful like motivator for why you're successful?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that. I think that I see so many people, and it's hard. I shouldn't be comparing myself to other people, so that's something to note. But there's a lot of people who had a parent who worked in the entertainment industry that allowed them, and you know, to give them connections, etc. There's a lot of people who are very like, I guess, attractive, talented, all of the everything you could want. Because of that, they also have had like, you know, everything line up, stars align. People have gotten lucky. I just have not been the type of person to get lucky in my life. So I've always had to be the person to put in extra work. My entire life, you know, I feel like it's been consistent that people make fun of me, etc. So I might as well use that to my advantage. And for as long as people throw things at me, I will always throw back. And I feel like I have to. There's too many talented musicians out there that are too many good looking, talented, blah, 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 that no one cares about. Like, why are people going to care about me? And it's whatever cards I've been dealt with, I have to adapt with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Totally makes sense. I just think, maybe looking at it from the outside, or maybe just some certain things that I've learned is that I think in life we all want to be understood, right? And we all want to be kind of like understood for who we are. And I think one of the paths to doing that is to create like a bridge between ourselves and that other person that maybe isn't a fan of ours, we don't agree with, or whatever. And I think it's tough because I think when people say things that are hateful or that are incredibly mean and disrespectful, it creates this like jolt inside of us to like immediately want to rebel, right? I also think that, in order for us to feel more understood, I think at times if we can just kind of let our guards down a little bit and just be like, all right, like I understand that if somebody is being that disrespectful to me with for no reason, there's clearly like hurting. You know what I mean? Like, you're not seeing successful people like leave negative comments on social media for no reason, right? And I think when people do that, I just think it creates an opportunity to like learn. Like that's been one of the greatest blessings from the show is to be able to learn about different people's perspectives, even though I might not see like eye to eye with certain people. I'm like, oh, like that definitely now makes more sense than before. And I just think that, I think that, and I've talked about this before. I think the biggest problem with Christians specifically now is that they expect there to be that bridge, right, between them and the people who aren't Christians. And they expect everybody else to come over to their side of the bridge when they don't want to go to their side of the bridge and talk to them and reason with them, right? And so I just think sometimes doing things like that could potentially like lead to being like, oh, like now I understand where you're coming from. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I guess the biggest problem I've had is I feel like in today's day and age of like social media, people don't even most people, even with the chance to build a bridge, will refuse to because they can hide behind a social media account without a profile picture, without et cetera, et cetera. Because you have the ability to say anything without facing any repercussions for what you've said on social media. We're lacking that human element of building bridges that it just like I don't even have the answer for what to do besides to stand up for yourself and keep going no matter what. But people can just like, why would I want to build a bridge or care if I can just face no consequences for saying someone is anything and then hide behind a fake social media account?
Yeah, I mean that is like one of the negative things about social media is it has created an ability for people to hide behind a screen, right? And to like throw these punches online they would never throw like in real life, right? Or to say things they would never say in real life. I mean, it's very interesting, and I don't have the answer either. I'm gonna definitely see what you're saying in that it's like very challenging, especially on something like social media, and that's like a main form of content now for creators, where you're now having to deal with this negative feedback that we were talking about before we recorded in a very intense way. And I guess kind of getting back to that, like, I mean, do you have any like best practices for yourself and how you deal with mental health now, given the fact that, like you said, you still are the guy that is hated by a lot of people? You get a lot of, negative comments, negative DMs. Like, other than kind of clapping back, what are some other things that you do to kind of protect your own state of mind?
I would say I clap back to way fewer people than what I do my other practices on. And that includes number one, which you mentioned, anyone who's ever bullying someone is always projecting their own feelings of themselves onto other people because it's like, why else? Like, I always think about too, like, especially with social media, if I really was disgusted by something or if I really hated it, I would just scroll. Like, why would I like spend and waste my time commenting energy and putting it on? It's like so easy. It's like if I like see like, I don't know if you've ever seen those videos that are really gross on social media where you're like, ah, and then you just skip. Like that is what I would do. I would not comment, ew, gross under it, right? Because then all you're gonna do is see more of it. But I think these people know that too, and I think they are just literally hurting themselves, and they're looking for anything they can project it onto. And I have learned to mostly 90. I'm so desensitized to people saying things about me. I respond to probably 1 in 1,000 hate comments. Most of them is just like these people are. I feel bad. I feel bad. Sometimes I'll be on a live stream because I live stream every day, and someone will like come in the live stream and they'll start saying like you're a poser, kill yourself over and over again, and like keep spamming it. And then a new practice I've started doing is like after I recognize that, I'm like, yo, everybody cheer this person on. We love you. Like, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause it's like, what are you going to do if like the person you're commenting hate on is just being like, cause it's like, I feel bad. It's like, you need love. Like, hey, everybody, Tobias is having a bad day. They're in here to tell everyone about it. Everybody, let's cheer Tobias on. Like the person who's saying that, you know what I'm saying? Like that's another practice I do. The biggest thing is just remembering that no matter what anyone says about you, it has no dictation of who you are, who you will become. People say anything they can about me, and it hasn't done. And it's always projection.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a massive difference between like some random person like commenting something hateful on a post versus like somebody that's in your circle or a friend of yours or even like a member of your family like calling you on the phone and being like, hey, like I want to like give you some feedback if you're open to it. Like, there's a big difference, right? And I just think that so many people are hurting now. I think there's a lot of people that are just battling like some deep issues, a lot of kids, and I know that a lot of your motivation is to reach kids, and I'm sure you get a lot that reach out to you. Like, why do you think so many kids are having such a hard time right now?
I wish I was. Older and knew enough to know about what it was like for kids years before, because all I know is the Gen Z and maybe a little bit about millennials. I think it's a combination of social media, parenting, the culture. Dude, it's such a like this is an iceberg of like why there's so many problems within today. And truth be told, actually now that I'm thinking about it, I don't have an answer. I just know that there's a problem, and the solution I can find is by every time I go live, I talk about mental health awareness, which just means talking about it. Because the biggest problem I know is that if I don't talk about how I'm feeling, it becomes bottled up and it eats away at me. And I know a lot of people feel the same. So every day I go live, I say, talk about your mental health. Find a trusted adult if you can. A professional therapist is way better, but anything you can to just somebody, because if you don't talk, people won't know. It doesn't, mental illness doesn't look anyway. Having bad mental health doesn't look anyway. Number one. Number two, I try to talk about bullying every day on my live streams. Like, it's always projection. Don't let it get to you. And then number three, I built this Discord known as the X Movement, and it's like this like community that I wish I had when I was younger, which is we have over 15,000 members, and it's a Discord server where people are encouraged to just vent and just to be heard. We have moderators who try to keep it safe. We have professional mental health resources that are easy access pinned at the top of these chats, but just creating a place for people to be able to say, I am feeling this way. And then if you see at all times of the day this chat is active, you are not alone. Like this world sucks for most people. I think this world just in general is just kind of, I have a decently nihilist view of the world. But the best thing I can do is encourage, is try to make a difference, try to tell people they're not alone. That's the best I feel like I can do.
So when I graduated high school, I think is when Facebook came out. I could be getting that wrong a little bit, but I was not, you mentioned like what was it like to grow up without social media and stuff like that. Like I remember I was like kind of in between, like graduated high school, Facebook kind of came out, and I think it was just mainly for like people connecting with each other through like, school connections. I think that's what it was originally for. But I was like busy. I was doing drugs, so like I didn't care to be on social media. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't. I didn't care like what somebody I went to high school was up to. I was like, oh, I just want to do drugs with the people I'm doing drugs with and sell drugs to the people I'm selling drugs with. So it wasn't like this. I don't know if obsession's the right word, but it wasn't like this part of my. It wasn't part of my lifestyle. But it wasn't part of a lot of people's lifestyles back then, where your identity and like your day to day was just consumed with information via social media. You know what I mean? We were busy doing other things. We were outside playing, we were going to parties, we were around people like in person. And now I think what's happened is, and don't get me wrong, like I think social media is great for a lot of things, but hearing what you're saying and talking about it in the context of like kids, I think that social media has replaced a lot of what people did before that time, has replaced a lot of things, right? It's replaced the community aspect. It's replaced just the relationship building aspect. It's replaced like the learning aspect, right? Which I think a lot of that just is not, it's not good because of the superficialness and the overconsumptionness that social media can bring, where now, and you're also seeing a lot of things that just aren't true, right? You have kids that are posting photos with like a sports car it's not theirs, right? And then you have kids who are scrolling and they're like, oh my God, like, why don't I have a sports car like that person? Or, you see people that, are getting married, out of college and they're super happy. And, but behind closed doors, like that relationship, like is likely going to, might fail in the next like 3 to 6 months or whatever. And so I just think a lot of that didn't exist, right? And I think kids now are just struggling with the over consumption and access to information that they didn't have before. And then the comparison comes in, not feeling like you're enough, editing photos, like filters, like none of that existed, right? Or now you're able to change the way you look on the app that you're using. And so now, that creates a whole lot of like body image issues and mental health issues that didn't exist. So there's a lot, and I would love to hear your thoughts on what I just said. I mean, I also, again, want to reiterate, I think social media in the content space is an amazing thing, and it does a lot of great things for people. Like you and I wouldn't have connected if it wasn't for social media. But that said, I think for kids specifically, because their brains aren't fully developed at that time, and they don't have the critical thinking skills that people have when they're older. I think they creates a variety of problems that downstream could lead to more negative outcomes, given the fact that it's just so much in your face every single day.
Yeah, I had a conversation about this with one of my producers, Matt Good, where we were talking about how I don't think, I mean, okay, assuming the world, everything is just, we're just animals on a planet floating through space, right? We were not supposed to have our phones and social media, and it's like very unnatural for us as animals to be looking at do everything you just described is just very unnatural, and I would say it is pretty much bad for us. And I guess I apologize ahead of time, but maybe I shouldn't apologize. It's just me. I'm just a nihilistic person that I have, that's my struggle. And so I'm like, I can't think of much good for social media. I try my best. That's why I'm trying my best to talk about mental. I'm trying my best to do good, but it seems like a net negative. That's my perspective. I don't know. I mean, I think there's good things about it, but yeah, we're not supposed to be doing any of the things you just described. That doesn't seem natural.
Yeah, and I think because of that, I think kids have now just gotten used to that way of living, right? And their brains are developing in the way that they once did. You're getting this like fake rise in dopamine, you know, every day by people who like your stuff, or if somebody like sends you a message, or if somebody comments on a post you make, or whatever the case may be, or you just scroll and scroll and scroll, and that's giving you different dopamine hits because now you're seeing things that are new all the time. And I just think it just, to an undeveloped brain, I think it can create some problems outside of the fact that you're just staring at a screen for hours and hours and hours every single day, and you're not outside, you're not in social settings like what like kids were. You're not like being slightly adventurous. You're not like going and playing sports, or going to joining a club or whatever kids would do from an extracurricular perspective to like have fun in their life that didn't revolve like their phone. I think people's hobbies now have become kids' hobbies in many ways has become their phone and social media. And then the bullying, like you said, that like can happen with people online. It's way easier now, right, to get negative feedback via social media based on what people say to you in a matter of seconds. Like you make a post, somebody doesn't like it, now you have maybe 10 people in the first few minutes posting negative comments, then that post gets sent in like group chats, and now everybody else is like swarming and getting creating negative comments, and then that just creates momentum, and now it's like the algorithm takes the post, and now it's it just creates a situation that like never existed. But I do think it's in a way it's on the responsibility of parents and kids to be able to understand like guidelines around social media, so they're not just walking into it blindly like, oh, I'm just going to use it with no risk, right? Because we typically don't do that with anything else.
No, I nothing about this is natural. That whole hate comment thing, it's literally like social media is created in a way where like hate is incentivized. You know what I'm saying? It's bad. Yeah, a black hole of a conversation, unfortunately. I don't know what else where the good comes from it other than it is possible to try to push out good. You just have to have thick skin.
Well, so like outside of like social media and like the fact that culture has shifted a bit, like what do you think are some other reasons that like so many kids are kind of struggling, if you had to pinpoint something?
I don't know. I guess I would have to guess parenting. I would guess a lot of it has to do with parents like, giving enough time for their kids and like real. I mean, just the whole like if you're gonna have kids, you have to accept that your life is gonna change completely. You have to be ready for it. There's all of these things. I mean, iceberg. You know what I'm saying? Like it could go down to like. I mean, I'm even thinking about this is a hot take, but I'm like abortion. Like we should like you could even go into like how this is really hot take. This is my but I'm filled with hot takes. People like some people just shouldn't be parents. Like some people, this is my take, but like some people just need like it's such a responsibility to put a kid onto this earth. You just need to make sure you're ready for it, and a lot of parents aren't. That's why I mean, like, who lets their kids comment this shit on social media? Do you know what I'm saying? I see some of those vicious comments coming from like teenagers where I'm like, who lets you have a phone? And that's part of it, right? Like I think a lot of it comes down to parents. What's your take on that?
On parenting,
Yeah, parenting being a problem with this.
so I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to like. I would say I think people need to take that with a grain of salt. I do agree that if you're a parent, you definitely have to take responsibility for your kids. You can't just have a kid and then just be like, oh, like I'm out, peace. You know what I mean? And just I think you need to give them the best level of care you possibly can. But everybody's situation is different, right? Like I think, there's a lot of people that have like a two-parent household and one person works, one person doesn't, where it's much easier for somebody to provide, be there all the time with their kid and just spend, a good amount of time with them. I think for people like, I grew up split home, and my mom, I was with my grandparents a lot because my mom worked a lot and my dad, he worked. So it was, and as I've gotten older, I understood that that's what needed to be done in the best interest of like us at that time was them working and me spending time with my grandparents. Right. I mean, if they were together, that might have been a different story, but I think, it just depends on the situation. I think that, sometimes it's just life, and that if unfortunate circumstances happen and there's like a single parent household, like it's a lot tougher for that person to be fully attentive to their kid than it is when there's two parents, right? I mean, I agree that, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's certain people that just shouldn't have kids. I mean, like you said, like, and I also think that if you're a parent, yeah, you accept responsibility for your child in whatever way you possibly can with what you're going through in your life, right? And I just think it's just dependent upon situations. I mean, the more I've learned about parenting through the podcast, I mean, I've learned that like modeling behavior is like the most important thing ever. That like kids watch what you do, they don't listen to what you say for the most part. So if like you're out doing certain things and then expecting them not to do those same things, there's like this disconnect. It's like, wait a second, like you're telling me not to do these things and I'm watching you do the same thing. And I think kids sometimes have a hard time with like being able to critically think and being like, oh, they're doing that because it's legal for them to do a certain thing, or they're old enough to be able to be responsible enough to do that, and I'm not because I'm a 12-year-old or whatever, or I'm an 8-year-old or whatever the example is. It's just it's a lot. I don't want to. I think when you blame parenting, I think it becomes the same slippery slope that I fell down, where I was just blaming my parents for the demise in my life. But there reached a point where I knew I needed to change, and it was up to me to make the decision to change. But it's not to say that parenting isn't important. I think, when you're a parent, I think it's obviously incredibly important of how you raise your child. And the last thing I'll say is that it's tough. I think, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and it's like one side of the coin is be there for your kid at all times. And that kid will really appreciate that, right? Because it's like now they're seeing their parents sacrifice so much to be with them. But on the other side of that is now you potentially run the risk of raising a super entitled kid who thinks that the world revolves around them, because now you're sacrificing your career and money to be with the kid. It's like, I mean, I've talked to, I've had a lot of people, I mean, a fair amount of people, I guess, over the last few years get divorced. And I've talked to them about why they got divorced, like parents, friends of mine. And like the biggest reason is they say like we put our kids on like pedestals and forgot to like be a partner. And we forgot to like chase after what we wanted in life. And so I think it's just it's a roundabout way of it saying it's a slippery slope. I think kids just I think kids have it harder today for a variety of reasons. I'm sure it's not just parenting, it's not just social media. I think there's a lot of stress that didn't exist in the there's a lot of stress going on right now in the world, and I think that you know kids I don't think are dealing with it well. I think the rise of like things like fentanyl are making overdose deaths go up every year, which I think is really scary. There's just a lot I think now that's changed in the world that didn't exist like decades ago.
Yeah, and as I've been thinking about this too. Now that we've started this conversation, I'm like, I just don't even know if there is an answer. As much as I was trying to make an answer, it's like you're right. You could argue everything about like there is no right way. I don't even know. Like I cannot certainly fathom having kids anytime soon because I just know I would screw it up. I you know what I'm saying? Like I don't even know how to do that right. I don't know if the answer is not black and white as in parenting. I think it's just the world, and I think the world is now we're going back to it's just a tough place, and you just I don't know. Just all I can do is promote a positive message as much as I can and be myself, and that's the only thing I have control over. Everything else, I just feel like I have to go with the flow in the ocean. You know.
I want to talk about bullying because that is something that I know we really strongly believe in helping people that have been bullied and that are being like bullied in school and stuff. Like, what do you tell people like now? Like, what's your advice for somebody who's like feels like they're being bullied at their job or they're being bullied in school and they feel like powerless in their ability to deal with it?
It's always projection. An example I use is if you look at any of the comment sections for any of my music posts that have done well, most of the comments are people saying horrible things about me. And if you look at my career and everything that's happened, it's affected nothing and it's only helped it. People can say anything about anyone and it's just words. And anytime they do, it's always projecting. Because once again, why would they say anything? If you really thought that someone was fat. And also, if you can even like, if you look at how people are bullying you or what they're saying about you, it's always like way deeper. For example, whenever if someone would make a comment about your weight, right? They probably have an issue with their own self-esteem and their own image, and that's why they're projecting onto you. I feel like most homophobic people I've met are closeted. Like it's usually like some sort of like projection. Like why else would you care what anyone else does with their life and how they love and etc. Right? Why would you care about how someone dresses unless you have a problem with your style? Usually, like the people who bully, I've seen people for how they dress like the most copy paste, etc. People who bully people for their music are usually like most of the times I see hate comments about you're a bad musician, whatever, or like from bands that never made it, unsuccessful musicians, right? Bullying is always a form of projection. You can look deep within what every word that they say about you. Somehow you could like pinpoint how it connects back to themselves. It's just not worth your time because it affects you in no way. Just walk away. Don't give it energy. Feel bad for them.
I think one of the other problems that exists is people associate having different beliefs or even maybe like values with somebody being like wrong or a bad person, or it's like, oh, I believe differently than that person, so I'm gonna like tear them down. Like somebody believes differently about you and they want to tear you down in the comments. Instead of just accepting the fact like, hey, I may not like see eye to eye with this person, but I'm not gonna like try to tear him down because he thinks differently than me. I think that's like the goal, right? Is if we can get to a place like that where there's a difference between having a difference of opinion and being disrespectful. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's where we've gotten lost is now people, I think humans are just egotistical in nature, right? In that they believe that if somebody thinks different than them, that they should try to do whatever they can to prove to themselves that they're right in the situation, that their perspective is wrong. And I just don't think that's how the world works. You know what I mean? I don't think that's how relationships work. I don't think that's how business works. I think how things work is like being able to accept that just because you don't believe the same thing that they do, or you don't share the same values or the same opinions, doesn't necessarily mean that person is bad or that you have to like tear them down. Just like you said, like keep scrolling. You know what I mean? Like just keep scrolling through. If you don't like it, you don't have to like try and like get, destroy somebody's self-worth because you don't like what somebody's saying. You just unsubscribe, unfollow, like keep scrolling. That's all it is.
And the other thing is, I guess that might be helpful is it happens to everybody. It's super like unfortunately normal with social media. And part of this is if you can accept that if you're going to post something on social media and it's going to do well, you're going to get hate in whatever it is, and don't let it get to you. It's projection, etc. That is the key. It's just being like, hey, it's not me. This happens to everybody. That's the one thing I wish I knew earlier. It was when I started getting mass amounts of hate that has happened to every single band I've ever seen succeed. It's like they always went through a phase where it was not cool to like, etc. Like Limp Bizkit, right? One of the most hated bands of all time, had a complete comeback. Everyone likes them now.
I love Limp Bizkit.
I love Limp Bizkit, but okay? So you probably have liked them for a while. Do you remember when it was like not cool to like them, and it was like a whole thing?
It was not cool to like them. It wasn't cool to like Eminem when he first came out.
Right, Linkin Park, all these bands, but now look at how big they are. So I just wish I knew that that's for everybody, and including I spoke with a wrestler recently who's given me a lot of advice, and he's like a heel who's like very successful right now, one of the world champions, and he was telling me about how like he was even hated and people made fun of him on his for no reason, and this happens with everybody. It's like this is just it's normal. Unfortunately, it's not you. And you know what I'm saying? So just move on from bullying. It's not even worth time and energy in any way, shape, or form, unless you're going to use it to your advantage, which is equally possible.
The adversity advantage.
Exactly.
And so you talked about the one of the things you do to deal with your mental health now in the entertainment space is you talk about understanding that people project, right? And when people are talking negatively about you, a lot of it is just coming from their inability to like see, something about themselves, or like I also kind of chimed in and said their inability to just accept that people are allowed to think differently than you, right? Do you do anything like, are you in therapy now? Do you like work out? Like, do you do anything from like a habit perspective, like on a daily or weekly basis to kind of help keep you mentally sound?
All the above. Everything I possibly can to take care of myself because I need to in order to keep this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I need to consistently be taking care of myself, and if I don't, you know what I'm saying? It's like yeah, I work out every time as much as I possibly can because that is a really good release for me. Everything I can. But I just know the music career. Every successful musician I've talked to now that is giving me advice always talks about it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And with every successful entertainer, nothing happens overnight. There will be a day where everything looks like to the general public it was overnight, but it's never was. Chapel Rowan, a great example of an artist who
Wait, is
recently
it
has had
Chapel
huge.
Rowan or is it Chapel Roan? I thought it was.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know.
Either way,
Then come on,
either
help me out.
I don't know, man. I wish I knew. But all I do know is that she was in like 2016 or 2017 playing the same songs that are huge right now. Do you like just for reference? It's 7 6 7 years there, and I know most people say it takes at least 10 years. And I've been TX2 for 10 years until it's now. Now is the time people have started recognizing it. But I know I'm halfway through the tunnel. You know, I still got another 10 years to go at least till we're taking over.
How do you deal with like the ups and downs of your career?
I'm lucky that I have a support system. I think it's really important to have people in your life that I've gone through a lot of bad people and recognize that I'm going to have to lose a lot of people in order to find the right group. I have my guitarist Cam now, who I live with. He's upstairs. If you heard any hammering, that was probably him working on something for our set and on the tour. And I have Corky. I have a lot of people in my life that I can rely on that are there for me, and I'm lucky to have them. I've basically created my own family of people that are close to me that may not be blood but are feel as close as it gets to that. And I consistently work out. I consistently talk about mental health and do everything I can for that. And I take care of myself as much as it possibly can. And I find healthy coping mechanisms. I used to have, I know something I talk about as well on my live streams is there's nothing cool about hurting yourself. There's nothing glamorous about it. I used to have that problem, but I've since found that going live every day, taking a step forward, even if it's just a simple post, even whether or not the post does well, I did one thing that maybe one new person saw me. And if every single day, religiously, my religion is if every day I take a step, I at least am one step closer to the end of the tunnel, you know?
And it's really cool that you've been able to like identify that you had, some unhealthy coping mechanisms, and now you have a lot of things that you do in a healthy way, and that you've developed a strong support system, which I think is incredibly important. In the entertainment space, I know it can be kind of hard to like be sucked into spending time with the wrong people. Like, how do you justify who gets time from you and who doesn't?
I keep my circle small because I've learned that I'd rather have a few good friends that I can rely on through everything than a lot of friends. Also, I've learned that for me, I'm not a big networking guy because everything in my career I think always comes back to me. If I'm going to do it, no one else is going to give me a career, nobody else is going to make it for me. I'm going to have to do this all myself. So, by taking complete responsibility in that everything that happens in my career is my fault, I've been able to build a career because it's just taking responsibility with my friendships as well. If my friends are mistreating me, it's my responsibility to remove them. If everything is always consistently my fault, which this might be an extreme view, but I think it's been healthy for me, then I have full control over everything in my life, including my friendships and relationships.
I mean, I think personal responsibility and accountability is like crucial for mental health. So I totally agree with you. The Avicii documentary recently came out. We were talking about it before we recorded, and I think I saw somebody make a comment somewhere that they wish there was more of an emphasis on like wellness in the entertainment space. What do you think the entertainment space could do differently to make sure that the creators, the artists, are being able to optimize their mental health in the best way possible?
I don't know. I wish I could write a song that was like, life is good, happiness. But I've never to this day been able to. I just know that by going live every day, and talking about positive things and mental health and showing people that TX2 is a person and more than just a character in songwriting, and justifying like the lyrics might be dark, but that is because I'm taking a moment and showing you that if you relate, you're not alone. But there is other healthy coping mechanism, etc. All the conversations I have, I could still make a difference. Even though I try to write dark music from my heart and get it out. It's almost like music's become my therapy. It still doesn't mean I have to be a dark artist where my message is completely dark and blah blah blah. It's possible to still promote good things and write about dark things. But I wish I was able to write a happy song. I can't, but I know that some people can, and I think that it's just important that you realize that it's normal to feel bad and to have horrible things happen in life, unfortunately, and you're not alone in that. That's just you just have to. That's what I do. I wish I knew better.
Like, do you ever worry that you expressing yourself through your lyrics and then being kind of dark at times can sometimes rub off on people in the wrong way?
I know it does. I know that people who just see 10 seconds of me saying something dark, etc., in a song on social media are going to have a negative view of me, but that just can't be my responsibility. If you want to understand my music, you're going to have to understand the whole picture. And and it's the same thing with like people make judgments about people on the street without even getting to know them. Like the whole book by its cover thing, like that's going to happen no matter what. I can't prevent that. But to the people who want to give me more time, I can explain to you why I do what I do and the positive messages of this. I don't know if it's possible for me to make videos that are always happy and always positive to appease everybody else. I just don't want to do that. I want to make things for me, and I want my art to come from the heart, and I still want to just deep down feel like those who listen, I'm here to give a positive message to.
Given that, like, what do you think's the most misunderstood thing about you?
I don't know. I think it's just I mean, I've been set up to fail with, as most musicians are, with social media, where if everyone judges an artist based off 15 seconds, you're gonna have a ton of preconceived notions that make no sense in the grand scheme of things. Like, I wrote a song. I'm a 5'4" man whore who slit his wrist. That's the song, the lyric that everyone watched that much and then they skipped. I wrote a song at a low point where I was like, this is a cry for help that nobody's ever going to get. And just because a song sounds happy, sounds like an AC/DC song, if no one's going to really listen to the lyrics, and I could write a song about how people will not be listening to the lyrics, and they'll prove that exact point by listening to 5 to 10 seconds. I think it's like we're set up to fail in today's social media culture, but at the same time, we're set up to succeed because it's a yin and yang. I'm going to post videos that are going to go viral, and for the people who are going to decide to actually listen to the rest of the song and to what my message is as an artist and etc., that I'm now able to be discovered by hundreds and thousands of millions of open-minded people. And to the closed-minded people, they're going to hate me no matter what, whatever. I was set up to fail for them, and I just can't give them my time or energy, and they have to be put into that bullying, projecting category because of that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Was that the song? I think I was reading that song come out. Was it like 5 years ago, 6 years ago? No.
Not 5 years. It was 2 or 3.
And then did you have to come out and like explain like what the song was about? And
Yeah, it felt a little ridiculous because like the lyrics explain the song well enough, but no one would listen to But then the crazy thing is that the people who actually listened to the song when I explained what the song was about listened to me, and the people who were going to give it 5 to 10 seconds, their opinions have already been made, and I can't sway their opinions because they don't want to listen to what I have to say, if that makes sense.
knowing what you know now and knowing what you've accomplished, like let's just say you're talking to like the 18-year-old version of you. You've just moved out of your parents' house. Like, what advice would you give him?
You can do anything, and I mean anything in this world. The odds of making it as a musician are lower than that of getting a gold medal as an Olympic athlete, and that's like an actual statistic. If the fact that I'm able to do this, feeling like I've always been misunderstood and joked about, and coming from a small town, Fort Collins, and then blah, 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 parent, blah, 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 I'm still doing it. And it's because I take complete responsibility, and no matter what happens, it does come down to me. But as long as I just never quit, and every day I take a step, I'm going to get to where I need, as long as every single day I take a step. So to the 18-year-old self, just keep stepping. Don't let anybody stop you. Anybody's words mean nothing. All that matters is what your goal is and how you achieve it.
What's your relationship like now with your family?
There's been a complete power flop. I played a show to 5,000 people and did 6,000 maybe in Denver with Ice Nine Kills. And in this moment, I got my family to come out to that show. And I remember after I played to the other set, I looked at my dad and I was like, you just believe in your dreams, man. You could do anything. Look at that crowd. You know what I'm saying? Like, which was like a little sassy and a sarcastic answer, but there's, what are you going to like? I make my living off music. I'm so lucky to do that. And I've worked to do it. I did it with all the adversity, etc. What are you going to do about it? You know, I think I was able to put my dad in his place. And there's what is he going to say now? There's literally like, you know what, you know, like,
So do you guys ever like talk now or no?
no, he's not worth my time and energy. But I will be polite and respectful as much as I possibly can, because hate is a wasted emotion.
Right. What about your mom?
Yeah, I love my mom. She's very supportive. I've encouraged her to stand up to my dad. And there was like I remember in the last year, there was a point where my mom, like, you know, was like, I'm going to walk out. Like, this is, you don't control my life, etc. And I think that also put my dad in his place. So I think the family is at a better point than it ever has been. And I am just thankful that I've been able to hopefully inspire my mom and myself to what anyone says, including your family, anyone's opinion. Just you know, stand up for what you believe in, keep chasing it, and words are just words.
Words are just words. Well, Evan, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me and for giving me your time of day and for all the you know, knowledge and everything you talked about at the start of this. I appreciate.
You got it, man.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I really think you're going to like this video as well. I'll see you there.